take to do it. There we go. We are live.
Wow.
So, thank you very much. It is 1 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 10th of January. It is day 2 for the This Is Burnout campaign. And I'm excited to be speaking to my next guest, my current guest, my now guest, which is Morgan Gleave. Hi, Morgan. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, good. Thanks.
Good. I'm excited to be talking with you this afternoon. We've got, and I think, so for people that are watching and or listening, in terms of planning these conversations, I'd put in the booking link. I think there were 5 or 6 questions that I'd asked people in terms of booking, and Morgan's answers I really, really want to be getting into in as quickly as possible. Before, though, I ask Morgan to introduce himself, just a word of warning. For those of you that were watching the live with Deborah a couple of hours ago, you will notice that I kept vanishing because I thought there was a problem with the streaming platform that I was using at my end. And it's not that at all. I live in the Fens in the middle of nowhere. On a good day, we get like 10 meg of download and upload speed. Everybody says live in the country like it's a really good idea until you do it.
Yeah,
the wind has picked up a lot. We do rely heavily on 4G here. The wind has picked up a lot. It has also started to snow, and therefore my internet is not particularly steady. I do not, though, want to cut out on Morgan's interview because some of what we're going to be talking about is really useful, really helpful, and I think actually maybe kind of quite deep, depending on kind of where we get into it. So if for any reason, if we do start to cut out, what Morgan and I are going to do is we're going to end the live stream. Morgan and I will take the conversation kind of behind the scenes, and then I will share our conversation afterwards. So if you're watching and wondering what's happening, if we vanish, we are still talking, but we will come back to you with the live stream afterwards. So just to kind of make you all aware of that for what's happening. But in the interim, if I vanish, Morgan is just going to keep talking to you.
and yeah, as soon as I'm a chatterbox as well. So
here you go, Morgan chatterbox, right? So he's going to fill as much space as is needed. If we both vanish, right? If we both vanish, then we are coming back to you a little later because we will talk behind the scenes and then we'll record that conversation and we'll come back to you. So that's enough of the tech rubbish for this afternoon. The focus for the next 45 minutes or so is all about Morgan and everything that he does and has experienced. So Morgan, before we get into the detail about the burnout and everything else, just tell us a little bit, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm a 53-year-old teenager. Long story short, I've loved comics my whole life. My Saturday treat used to be getting a Marvel comic from my local newsagents, and so it's something that has always been there. And I started drawing. I've drawn my whole life, and I've done comics on and off my whole life as well. I've had bits and pieces published around the world. I've had a few bits all over the place. And then, as we'll get into in the conversation, when I did have quite a bad breakdown about nearly 4 years ago, that's when I decided to take the leap and go into comics and cartoons full time. It's something that I always offered as a graphic designer because that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
But cartoons were always kind of in the mix, and quite often because people knew I could do it, they would ask me to do them for them. So that was fine.
Yeah.
And it took having a breakdown to make me realize that I needed to do what I wanted to do and what I'm actually quite good at.
Yeah.
So as we'll discuss it, I'm sure, as we go on. But basically, I just started drawing again with a real passion about 4 years ago. And by the end of that first year, it became apparent that I could make a career out of it. And here we are, 3 years on. I do work. Excuse me, sorry.
That's all right.
I probably need some more coffee. So I have sort of 2 strands. I do like what I would call my commercial work. So that's for people like Taz Thornton, who some of you may know. Do quite a lot of work with Taz, Fiona Scott, and lots of other people in business. So I do cartoons and comics for them. And last year I started to build up my own publishing company. which again is a lifelong dream, is to have my own publishing company putting out my own comics. And so
Amazing.
I started. Thank you. So I started that in earnest tail end of sort of 2021.
Yeah.
And last year, so I did my first proper convention as a professional artist last year rather. It's weird because we're at the beginning of the year.
No, it's like, what year are we in, right? What's happening?
Absolutely. Yes, so I did my first convention as a professional artist, as a cartoonist last year, which was incredible. A lot of my heroes were there, which was brilliant. So sharing the stage with your heroes is quite remarkable.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I just play around with lots of other stuff. I ride bikes, I skateboard, I make music, lots of creative stuff. I've just always been creative, and as I said, I'm sort of a 53-year-old teenager. So that's me in a nutshell, really.
Wonderful. I think I wonder how many of us like still wish that whatever age we were at, right? Like, you know, if I could say like a 42-year-old teenager, parts of my teenage years I don't think I'd want to go back to, and I don't think my parents would
absolutely
either. But the fun, creative side of it, right? I think probably lots of us would want to get back to as soon as we can. And I've got to ask, so my sons, you mentioned Marvel there, like favorite Marvel character?
Rocket Raccoon.
Rocket Raccoon, that's one I've not heard of, see?
He's in the he's probably more well known now because of the Guardians of the Galaxy films.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm trying to think. Bradley Cooper did the voice of him, yeah?
He did indeed, yeah. So it's the maniacal little raccoon who basically just wants to blow up everything and steal everything. One of my favorite artists drew, it was his Marvel debut back in the early 80s, and he drew the original Rocket Raccoon miniseries, which I've got. Looks nothing like how he draws now, but I've been hooked on that character ever since. And when I heard it was being brought in the films, and I just love the way he's done. And another one of my now current favorite artists is, he redid the character a few years ago, and it's great because he's just maniacal. Let's blow everything up and run away with everything. So I'd have to say Rocket, probably.
Okay, interesting one. Yeah, so I think we always had the kind of I suppose I'm going to say arguments in my house. I don't mean, I mean in the nicest possible jovial sense, but I think growing up with my sons in the house, there was always this kind of big debate about Marvel or DC. One of them was really, one of them was really big into Marvel. The other one was like definite kind of Batman. And we used to have these conversations over dinner, right? Who would win in a fight, right?
Oh, and
it was like all of the Marvel characters versus Batman.
Absolutely.
Until the Batman fan really just kind of realized that Batman really is a man in a suit.
Exactly.
So that kind of caused debate about the superpowers of some of the Marvel characters. But I think I don't know if you've seen the most recent, but I think I can't remember his name now either, but the latest Batman.
Oh, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, that seems to have quite a dark kind of feeling to it, doesn't it? It feels like it's on a par with kind of the Joker as the latest film in terms of the kind of darkness of that one.
It's interesting with the Joker film, the most recent one, with Joaquin Phoenix. I didn't want to see it because I thought it was going to be kind of almost like glamorizing poor mental health.
Yeah.
And I was really quite anti. I've had my mental health's been there like my whole life, poor mental health. And then I did actually decide to watch it, and I thought it was absolutely superb. It was the way his performance is stunning.
Oh, it's an incredible performance. Yeah. And I think with the mental health stuff, I think I was a little bit like you actually, and I know there was a lot when the film first came out about actually is like, are we now saying that everybody with a severe mental health condition is now going to kind of go around, dressed up and murdering everybody? And it was like, okay, we seem to have kind of gone from one extreme to the other in terms of the concerns. But I think the performance is incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It is. I mean, I could go off on a tangent for hours because I'm a comics geek, self-confessed geek about comics. But it was interesting, like sort of seeing how, especially female characters, had to go through some kind of serious, I mean, like major trauma to become who they were. You know, I mean, Batman, his parents were murdered. That's why he became Batman.
Yeah.
But yeah, the female characters especially seem to be, and it's something I'm quite uncomfortable with. You know, so yeah.
It's yeah. Well, there we go. We could probably geek out then on kind of Marvel and DC all day long, right? On the comics and stuff. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about, which is the burnout stuff. So let's start first of all. So when did you experience burnout? And I think probably if we kind of look at it this way as well, because you mentioned breakdown at the start of the conversation. So I think I suppose what I'm calling burnout, you're referring to as breakdown. Is that right?
Yeah, I would do. I mean, so I mean, I've had, as I say, I've struggled with mental health for a long time. And one thing that I've always done, and this is why burnout has happened to me a lot, is because I push myself so hard.
Yeah.
I'm a serious perfectionist with my artwork, which doesn't help. And sometimes if I don't get a piece done on time or as well as I like, then I'm putting more pressure onto myself. So that's kind of always been there. And it was not that long after my mum had died. And I was just sort of drifting with jobs. I was doing it. We'd kind of had to put the self-employed stuff to bed because we'd had to do a lot of care with my mum because of dementia and everything. So there was a lot of pressure there.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think probably didn't help. We were running the carers, but also I was going over every day, making sure she'd had a meal, making sure she was okay, and all that kind of thing. So the business kind of had to go on hiatus, really. And so what happened was I took on a job because I was very worried about our financial thing. This is another big pressure that I think you've probably seen this with other people you've spoken to. There's pressures that go onto you and you feel like you have to do more to address those problems.
Yeah, you've got to keep performing. You can't allow stuff to do.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, I mean, you heard my stories. I think you were in the audience at the TEDx, weren't you? And I think, there is that, like you that feeling that you just can't stop, right? If you stop, everything's going to almost kind of crash around you. So you feel like you have to keep going.
Yeah, so we'd got into a not good financial situation. We were in debt, not massively, but enough to affect day-to-day living. So I decided to take on a full-time job in healthcare. I did a complete flip. My mum was in healthcare most of her working life. So I decided to take on a job as a healthcare assistant at a brain injury hospital in Melton Mowbray. Something completely different. I wanted to do something that gave back. And to start off with, I mean, it was scary because obviously you're dealing with people with dementia, with other kinds of brain injuries, alcohol, blah, blah, all that stuff. They were very incredibly long days. I was fortunate that I could drive to work, but pardon me, it was like adding 2 hours onto my working day, and there were 12-hour working days. So I'd gone in, really thrown myself in at the deep end on this job. And I was absolutely terrified all the time that I was going to do something wrong. You know, I would do something wrong, and somebody would die because of a mistake I made. So I put that pressure was on me. And my wife.
Can I ask, Morgan, do you think, sorry to interrupt, but I wonder then, do you think the pressure about worrying that you may cause the death of somebody that was, I don't know if patient is the right word in terms of that facility, but do you think some of that pressure and some of that concern, do you think that was there because you were already at a point of heightened stress?
Yeah.
I suppose hindsight is, I suppose it might be a difficult question to answer. Actually, if you've been calmer or it had been a few years beforehand, do you think there would have been that constant voice kind of in the back of your head?
Possibly. I mean, it's sort of coming out of the other side of this experience made me realize that I'm actually quite an anxious person and I worry a lot. My wife always jokes, I will always find something to worry about. You know, at the moment we're in a good financial situation. Things like that are, you know, we've got a nice life.
Yeah.
but I will always find something to worry about, and I will always get anxious about stuff. So that's kind of always been there at sort of a background level, sort of anxiety. But with this, because it was kind of such a responsibility, and I felt, excuse me, that it's a very responsible role. You are caring for somebody, you know, in these different positions. So that my anxiety was getting higher and higher and higher.
Mhm.
And so these were really long days. They were working out to be 14-hour days, and I'd do 3 days on, 2 days off, and then 3 days on. But all I was doing is I was literally getting home and sleeping.
Right.
So my days off, where we were supposed to, hey, it's brilliant, we've got this free time and we can go out and do stuff, and I was just exhausted, absolutely exhausted.
And so you weren't doing the creative stuff that brings you the kind of joy and energy in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly. So all of that had gone. I was just working. That was like literally all I was doing. Because, you know, when the days I was on, I'd be up at 5:30 in the morning to get ready, have breakfast, drive over there, because you had to be there for a briefing first thing in the morning to let you know what was going on with the patients and so on. And then I think you were on duty from 8 o'clock. You were supposed to finish at 7. You never did. So you literally you were there like 12 hours, and then I'd have to drive home, and I'd just be shattered, absolutely exhausted, because I'd be so anxious about doing something wrong. That was that was my major anxiety, that I would do something wrong. And
So when you talk about the exhaustion, because again, we know that we can get different types of rest, we know that we can get different types of tiredness.
Yeah.
Do you think that for you, did it feel much more like a mental exhaustion? Or do you think that, given the length of the days as well, was that combined with kind of a physical exhaustion? I mean, if you had to, do you think it was more mental because of the constant anxiety?
I think it probably was more mental, because I would literally, we'd try and stay on a normal routine. So like let the alarm go off at a reasonable time in the morning when I wasn't at work, so we could spend the day together doing whatever. And I was just physically and mentally just absolutely shattered. Just I had like literally no energy, and all I could do was literally just turn my head over on the pillow and just go back to sleep. And then I'd probably wake up at about midday, something like that, and do bits and pieces, and then I just wasn't functioning really, you know. So so what actually happened was, I'd been there, I think I'd been there for about 4 or 5 months, and I woke up with the alarm on a Friday morning. The alarm went off at 5:30, and I was literally pinned to the bed. It felt like I was being held to the bed. I physically could not get up. I went into a full-blown panic attack because I didn't know what was going on. I could not physically get out of bed. Somehow I managed to get hold of my phone, and I managed to call in and say, I can't come in, I've had a panic attack. Because you're supposed to notify them 2 hours before the shift starts and all that sort of stuff. And I made the phone call, broke down in tears. My wife turned around to me and said, you've done the right thing. You've called in and you've made sure it's all. Said, I'll go and get you a coffee. And I slowly started coming back to life. And given that this was, nearly 4 years ago, luckily I managed to get a doctor's appointment the same day. And they said, exhaustion. And they signed me off.
Can I ask as well, before we kind of go into that, so in terms of your employer, you literally said to them, I've had a panic attack, because with a lot of, and I don't like the gender stereotypes, but I think actually when it comes to talking about mental health, I think we still have big differences between the way that men and women talk about these things. And actually, from what you've said there, it seems really unusual from my experience that any man would ring up to say, I've had a panic attack. Did you even think about that? Or was it just, you were just in it and this is what's happening?
I think I was kind of in it, but I've never been like a bloke. I've never been like a bloke. I've never been, to me, a sort of a stereotypical macho man kind of thing, to be a manly man, you know, who doesn't talk about stuff. I've always been quite sensitive. I've always been introspective and that sort of thing. So I think even by that point, and we'd been through a lot, you know, I'd lost my mum, which devastated me, and it still does. You know, it's 6 years this year, and I miss her every day. It's horrible. So I've always been a sensitive child, should we say. I've never been, I mean, my wife would always laugh if a tradesman came round to, you know, like a plumber or whatever.
Yeah.
Around, and she said I went into bloke mode. The way I spoke and behaved and everything would change. I'd like mirror.
You feel that you have to, because I think this is important as well. So it's almost like you feel you have to mask up, to be a certain way around certain other people. Is that's what you're saying? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And why, again, do you think that is something that happens like, do you think about it before it happens, or do you think that is a natural default?
I think it just happens. I don't even know I'm doing it, to be honest, a lot of the time.
But your wife obviously notices it when it happens.
She does. It's really funny. I mean, it's like we've been together like 20 years now, and we've been through a lot together. But so it's the longest relationship both of us have been in. And it's been interesting. We both have our demons with mental health and stuff. So we've been there. We've seen each other at our worst and our best. The fact that she has got me to sort of open up about stuff, and like the whole thing of sort of like talking about me going into bloke mode. It wasn't a dig. It's just
just an observation.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an observation. Yeah. And so I've sort of realised, you know, these kind of patterns of behaviour that have been there kind of my whole life, and I'm now that I'm more aware of them. It's sort of kind of like less of an issue, and I you know, I think it's funny now. Yeah.
And do you think over time, because I do, there is still this connotation, you know, like this manly man connotation, right? And there's certain things that have to. Do you think, I don't know, either being surrounded by that narrative or that typical stereotype, do you think at times that has played a part in the anxiety and the mental health issues that you've mentioned?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll use skateboarding as a sort of good analogy. I mean, this on the day that this all happened, my wife had made me a coffee, got me to calm down, got into the doctors and everything. Says, "Why don't you go and skate? That always chills you out." And when that's a really good idea. She says, "Look, even if you just pick up your board and walk up to the park, just go." Yeah. And I went out and I stayed out and I skated for an hour, and I felt so much better afterwards. But in the skateboarding world, over the last 2-3 years, we've lost a lot of people. There's been some really high profile cases, and it has been men, and it's been young men as well. We're talking very early 20s, and it's been suicide because of mental health, because skating and that kind of thing can be seen as quite macho and aggressive, because they'll literally jump off buildings and stuff like that. So it's quite, you know, adrenaline soaked and all that sort of stuff, and they feel like they have to play up to that role when they're not they're not like that. And I know of 3 within the last 2 years that have committed suicide. And it is good because the industry is actually talking about it. I've done artwork to help support it here and in America. And I have some little stickers that I have that are called "Talk to Someone." I have one on my bike. I have them on all of my boards, and it's the whole thing about just talk. You know, don't be a man and, you know, front it out or whatever. Just if you're struggling, talk. You know, so and
when you do that, and again, I suppose from I'm conscious, and I've when you said there about suicide, so I think you know, when we're talking about people that have died by suicide, that can happen, as we know, for lots and lots of different reasons, and you know, people can mask again, can't they? A lot of what
absolutely.
is being said. So I think there, in terms of what it is that you are saying, and I think we'll maybe put a bit of a trigger warning on in terms of this when we kind of do the replay. But I think this it is, isn't it? There is definitely this masking. And again, I think that's what you're seeing in some of the people that you're then socializing with. I think you've mentioned, in terms of this observation, your own awareness that actually this kind of masking has perhaps caused or contributed to some of the way in which you were feeling. And again, I think, from my perspective, if we can embrace who we are and do so with confidence, then actually, my hope of doing those things is that actually we can prevent things like burnout. We can decrease, mental health issues and all of those sorts of things, whereby we actually do feel that we can just be ourselves as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think, and then, so coming out out the other side of that day, I mean, I pretty much decided that day I wasn't going to go back to that job.
Right. Okay.
And I think I handed my notice in about 3 weeks later.
Right.
Which was a bit of a messy process, and that was quite stressful, but which didn't help. But actually making that decision, and then I took time for myself, and I started to find me again. I mean, I think I'd lost. There's lots of things about me, like I love riding and skating and all that. I've always done that kind of stuff, and it's very much part of me. And I got that back. I think, and I just slowly throughout the remainder of that year, just started kind of rebuilding. And again, the thing that really came back was my passion for creating.
Was that something throughout that process? Was that something that you did get help with, either by professionals or friends or whatever it might be? Or do you think that was that kind of a journey that you were going through on your own?
A bit of both, to be honest. I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts and just sitting there listening to podcasts and drawing and just chilling out, and I was just drawing for the sheer pleasure of it. There was no end goal. There wasn't like I must share this and make a. Fortunately, I had some help through social services. I had an occupational therapist who came to talk to me once a week. I got some really good support through an organisation called Vassal. I think it's Voluntary Action South Leicestershire. They're actually based in Leicester, and what they do is they help people that are unemployed who have mental health problems become more functioning people, whether that be through employment or something else. And they helped me a lot as well. So I was very fortunate that I did actually get quite a lot of outside support. And obviously my wife was absolutely brilliant. She always has been. She's sort of like she's kind of like my number one fan, like with my art and stuff. So that really helped. And when I sort of decided, when it got to sort of like summertime, I decided that I could actually start making a living out of drawing and drawing what I wanted to.
Yeah.
She was completely behind that. So that made the rest of the year, while I was still kind of recovering, a lot better. Yeah.
And do you think, again, when you say you were kind of listening to podcasts and just drawing, again, was that something, did you think like I must start drawing again, or was it just your natural, like that's just your chill out zone anyway? So that was just what you
kind of is. I mean, I'll go back, another observation that my wife makes. She's great at making these. She says she knows when I'm not well because I'm not drawing.
Okay.
If I'm not drawing, she knows there's something right. Yeah, even if I'm just doing.
I think we find, don't we, that the things that bring us joy, again, I'm saying burnout, you're saying breakdown, but I think
it was definitely
as we kind of do it. It's the stuff that brings us joy. The stuff it's that kind of tends to vanish first, right? It's that we tend to let go of first, because it's like we don't have the mental capacity, right? As you said, you were focusing on making money, having a job, you know, all of these sorts of things. And so that became the focus. Whereas potentially, and again, we may never know, but potentially, if you'd have carried on drawing during that time, getting your joy and having a bit more of your downtime, you might not have got to the point that you
absolutely. Because we just got into such a we just got into such a bad financial position that it's like I felt that I had, and again, this is a very male thing, going back to the male stereotype, thinking that I had to be the breadwinner, I had to earn the money, I had to make sure the bills were paid and all that sort of stuff. And that still affects me on a daily basis. I still worry about that. As I say, we are fortunate that we are now in a position where we don't have to worry about that, but it's still there. You know, that kind of little niggling. But I would say at the time when I took on that job, it was kind of pretty much crippling. You know, money has always been a bit of a problem for me, either, you know, whether you have too much or too little, you know, that it's an issue. So yeah, I was pushing so hard to make sure that I got a job that paid properly, and that sort of stuff. So I was it's the whole thing. I think really this is it. I was just piling so much pressure onto myself to you know, just to get through and to provide and all that kind of stuff. And it did, I did burn myself out because and again, you know, we talked about this in the earlier interviews, in the questions, and I've always pushed myself. I've had quite a lot of close friends and family have said you need to slow down.
Yeah, and again, I think that's been a really common theme across all of the interviews that I've done so far as part of this. And you know, with the clients that I work with, and you know, all of the work that I've been doing around this, even post this, you know, pre doing this week, there is, you know, it is the hardworking, really kind of over pushing. You mentioned perfectionist, right? It's those of us that are perfectionists, that are achieving, over performing, like we're the ones that are burning out. And I think what's even more interesting in having these conversations actually is just how closely that seems to be almost like the tipping point between knowing when we need to stop and knowing when to go. And I think I mentioned yesterday, I think in my introduction, and this is a big part actually of the coaching that I do, it's like almost like our strengths, at the point that we get to burnout, it's like our strengths are also our biggest challenge. It's like our, you know, all our creativity, the fact that we can push harder, work harder, you know, see things differently, all of those kind of things. It's almost like the strengths that got us to the point of burnout are then also at the same time the challenges that caused the burnout almost, right? It's that kind of interplay of it.
No, definitely. And again, it's just it's because, you know, and I'd got stuck into that male thinking that I must provide and we need to have, and I'd be like really getting really anxious about like electricity being cut off and stuff like that. And that is was just there constantly. So that constant pressure that you just try and really just to survive more than anything else was there. And so I just pushed, and so I took on this job thinking that it would be the cure, and it ended up being, well, it just ended up being too much. So
did you have the opportunity throughout the kind of work in I don't know, again, terminology may be slightly different, but I'm going to say kind of management, supervision, those sorts of things. Was there opportunity for you to talk about the level of anxiety that you were experiencing in the role?
No, I don't think there was. There was a really lovely lady who was kind of my supervisor. She was like the floor supervisor.
Right.
And she was helping me because you had to do professional development as you're going along. So you had to be qualified.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, I mean, this is another thing that they literally, when we went on an interview day, and I think there were 24 of us, and some of us had worked in care, some of us hadn't, but everybody got offered a job. So my supervisor, She was really good. She actually, and I told her, I addressed my concern of being anxious and worrying about doing things wrong and stuff like that. And she was actually really good and really supportive about it. But it was like one person out of a whole organization. Yeah, so there wasn't really an awful lot of support or understanding, to be honest. So there you go. And I'm now worrying what's going on because Kelly has frozen. So I don't know if she's having problems with her internet or her end because of weather. But yeah, but it was really bizarre when you consider that we were working in a health care, in a health situation, that there wasn't actually support for the people that were working there for their health, which is just a bit mad, really. So yeah, stuff that they should have been helping with just wasn't there at all. It's very difficult. There you go. So yeah, and it's very odd that once I came out of that situation, that the support actually was there. Yeah, at that time there was actually support available. So yeah, there you go. So I'm now wondering what's going to happen because I seem to be talking to myself because Kelly has suddenly disappeared. I don't, as I say, we were talking earlier about issues with weather and so on, and I don't know if she's had a problem with her internet. So I shall just sit here and wait, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate that I had a support. My wife was very supportive whilst all of this was happening, and I had something almost as simple as skateboarding actually saved me. I got into a routine of going out and skating like every day, which really helped me just physically getting out of the house and having a routine of just going out and doing something every day really helped me. I think I've talked to a lot of people, especially within skating, because people have actually been more open than I expected them to be, because it could be this kind of macho background kind of thing. And actually, a lot of the people that were there, you're back.
I'm back. I'm back. Thank you for filling the space.
No, you're quite welcome. Yeah, I mean, I was just saying about like the fact that I used skateboarding. I've actually half written a book called "Skateboarding Saved My Life," and I might go back to it. I've written quite a bit of it. But yeah, because on that very first day, I went out and I skated and I stayed out for an hour and I felt so much better. And it just became a routine that I would go out, and even if it was just for 10 minutes, just walking. We're fortunate that in our village, we've got not a bad little skate park. And most of the time, because I'd go out in the morning, I would have it to myself. This is another anxiety thing, that I'm quite uncomfortable around other people. And especially if I'm doing something like skating or cycling, because I don't think I'm very good at it. There's a little bit of performance anxiety.
Yeah, self-belief, confidence stuff.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. So my first guest this morning, Jay Unwin, he was talking about what he kind of, I don't know if I've never heard the phrase before as he worded it, but he was talking about extreme mindfulness.
Yes.
Which like you were talking about with the skateboarding, actually, I think that's what it is, right? You have, like, if you're not present whilst you're on that skateboard, you're going to fall off, right? If you're not present whilst you're doing a jump, you're going to fall off. And so he was talking about actually one way in order to help with our kind of mental capacity, help overcome this chronic stress, right? And burnout, as we know, is chronic stress.
Definitely.
So, he was talking about it from this extreme mindfulness, whereby if it is rock climbing, boxing, skateboarding, skiing, whatever it might be, you have no choice but to be focused on that activity at one time. Whereas actually with your drawing, and I'm sure you're into it, but actually the drawing, you could lose that focus, right? Your mind could wander, you could do lots of other stuff, but actually in doing on the skateboard, you lose that focus, you're going to end up on your ass.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be face planting pavements, right?
No, absolutely. And yeah, and I
think
that you're breaking up again.
I'm going to keep on talking because I don't know if I've now frozen or Morgan has now frozen. Hopefully one of us is still talking. And again, I'm super sorry for this. We've got kind of 5 minutes left. So I'm a little bit not necessarily, a bit apprehensive about cutting off and then kind of going from here. So I suppose we've got a couple more questions for Morgan.
I can still hear you. So.
And then I'm going to let him go. And I'm back in 20 minutes with my next guest, who is Melanie Costas. I may look at whether we come live with this one or not, but hopefully one of us is talking to you as we keep on.
Oh, it's buffering. It's doing something. Oh, dropped out again. Oh dear. But yeah, as Kelly was actually saying that, I mean, so yeah, this sort of extreme mindfulness, I like that. Yeah, when I skate or ride or whatever, I'm like in the zone very much, and the only focus I've got is what I'm actually doing. So it's very much, it's just either me and the bike or me and the board, and that is when I'm there, that's it. That's all I'm doing, and yeah. I suppose there is a bit of the self-preservation there. You are trying to make sure that you keep moving and keep doing the stuff so you don't fall on your ass, which I do anyway. But I think the whole, it's weird. I'm quite a big subscriber to sort of like Zen and to Buddhism. A lot of it, I'm not like a practicing Buddhist or anything, but a lot of it makes a lot of sense to me, has done for a long time. And I call my spot where I usually ride or skate, I call it the dojo. So it's kind of, and I also call it my happy place, because when I'm there, I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not thinking about anything externally. All I'm thinking about is what I'm doing on my bike or on my board. And so yeah, it's kind of it becomes almost like a meditative thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Keep filling the space. Right, before I cut out again, because I'm conscious of time, I just want us a kind of final question. And again, I just thank you for being as honest as you have been today. I really, really appreciate it. My final question: what do you think that people need to know about burnout that we just don't widely talk about? What's the number one thing that we need to be talking about that we're not?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just stop pushing. I think there is very much a culture. I mean, I touched upon it within the skating thing because of like how it's perceived from outside, and then seeing how these people are inside of it. And I think really just to listen to yourself. If you're tired, rest, stop. Don't keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's so hard. I mean, I'm my own worst enemy, really, that even on a day where I might not feel 100%, I will still push to go out and ride, for example. You know, outside of doing work, I'll still push myself to go out and do physical exercise for.
Right. Okay.
And I think I've fallen slightly into the trap of sort of like the social media world, where everything has to be, and it's like if you're not posting every day, you know, something's wrong and all that. And I am learning to sort of let go of all of that. I'm learning to let go, sort of full stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, just slow down, stop pushing so much. It's really not worth it. If something doesn't get done today, you finish it tomorrow. You know, I'm a fine one to talk, because if I start a piece of artwork, I generally push to get it finished.
Yeah,
absolutely.
probably important to say, right, even those of us that have been to that point, right, we're not the finished article. We're still learning the same as everybody else.
Absolutely.
We're still trying. We're still trying to make the changes and do everything. But we still know what we need to be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's weird, like with mental health and stuff. I mean, I've studied counselling. I was actually going to become a counsellor at one point because I got told by even my tutors said I would make a really good counsellor. But again, that was something else where I started pushing. You know, I did my level 2 and I did my level 3 and I passed them well, which was great because it was academic, not creative. So that was a good thing for me. But when I started doing the higher level to actually get qualified, my tutor sort of took me to one side at the end of the first year. Says, you've passed the first year and you've done really, really well. Says, but I really think you need to defer your second year because I can see you pushing too hard.
Okay, so that's inbuilt part of you then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the perfectionist thing. I mean, that's something I've grown up with. Both of my parents and my stepdad are like that. So I kind of grew up with that kind of thing. So, but yeah, and if something's not right, let it go. Don't try and make everything perfect. And turn the filter off.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for filling this spot. Thank you for applying and coming on today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. It's nice, always nice to kind of have a conversation with people that you've been kind of just chatting to very briefly on social media as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
Thank you very much for booking the slot and having today's conversation. If people want to find out more about you, I hadn't realised that it was you that was doing Taz and Fiona's cartooning. Of which I see frequently. So if people want to find out more about you and what it is that they do, where can they find out more about you and get in touch?
I'd look for me on LinkedIn. Just look for Morgan Gleave on LinkedIn.
Morgan Gleave on LinkedIn.
Yeah, because that's certainly where all of my professional work, what I would call my professional work, my commercial work goes. I usually quite often share my cartoon, my comic personal work on there as well. But LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. So do look out for Morgan on LinkedIn. So it's Morgan Gleave, Gleave. You'll be able to find him and his cartoon work on there. And if you want to see some of the cartooning in action, if you head over to Taz Thornton and Fiona Scott, by the sound of it, you'll be able to see some of the examples. I think Fiona's is on her podcast.
Yeah. So for Fiona, I did her podcast, and she's just started a new monthly thing. So I've done some work for that.
There you go.
And there's more stuff coming up for Taz this year. So
okay, there you go. So if you see any of the cartoony stuff on Taz and Fiona's, that by the sounds of it is Morgan, which I did not know. There we go. So Morgan, thank you very much. Again, apologies for the slight technical faults. I've got a plan B for tomorrow. So for day 3, everything is sorted. But for now, I'm going to say thank you very much, Morgan. Thank you to all of you that are watching. Again, if you found this or any of the conversations helpful, please do share them, comment the hashtag This Is Burnout. Please do share as much as you can on there. I'm going to be back in literally like 11 minutes. Speaking to the pink-haired warrior, Melanie Costas. We're going to be talking again more and more about burnout. So we've got dogs going and all sorts now. I will be back in 11 minutes. Morgan, thank you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. And I'll be back with you like 10 minutes time. See you later. Bye-bye.